Speech bubbles are a type of speech bubble that can be found in every manga. Simply put, the mangaka communicates to the reader that the character from whom this speech bubble originates is having a thought. It only becomes interesting at this point, because what the character is thinking can be interpreted by the reader. These speech bubbles therefore function as a kind of backdoor into the character's thoughts. Through empathy, context clues, and other prior knowledge, the reader can try to put themselves in the character's shoes and interpret what they might be currently thinking. I want to demonstrate how readers, and therefore the story itself, can benefit from speech bubbles using Mikio Ikemoto's Boruto manga as an example. Before that, however, we will take a closer look at an introductory example, an orchestrated bus hijacking used to uncover the identity of a pursuer in Tsugumi Oba's and Takeshi Obata's Death Note manga. In chapter 5 of the Death Note manga, Light Yagami learns from the Shinigami Ryuk that he is being followed by someone. In order to uncover the identity of his pursuer, Light devises a plan that involves both himself and the pursuer in a bus hijacking. The very first speech bubble of the pursuer appears during the ongoing bus hijacking. Based on facial expression, body language, and the context that the surveillance is being disrupted by a bus hijacking, the thought represented by the speech bubble is likely an expression of this disturbance and the bad timing. Something like, "Of all times, a bus hijacking now?" could be the thought. Light Yagami hands his companion a note stating that he plans to overpower the hijacker. This note is a bait, and Light deliberately holds it in a way that allows the pursuer to read it. Here we see the second speech bubble of the pursuer. He is visibly surprised by the content of the note. The thought represented by the speech bubble is possibly something like, "That's a stupid idea," or "That's crazy." Immediately afterward, the pursuer addresses Light Yagami, advises him against it, and says that he will handle the hijacker himself. What follows is Light Yagami's first speech bubble. He has succeeded in drawing the pursuer's attention to himself. If the note functions as a bait, then Light's thought, best represented by the speech bubble, would be something like, "He took the bait." Light then pretends not to trust the pursuer, prompting the latter to have his final speech bubble. The thought is likely something like, "He doesn't trust me," or "I have to identify myself to gain his trust." What comes next is something we all know. The pursuer reveals himself as FBI agent Ray Penber, unknowingly giving Kira his own identity. Light Yagami's plan to uncover the identity of his pursuer worked perfectly, and 1 week later he writes Ray Penber's name into the Death Note, ultimately killing him. One of the most interesting examples of the significance that speech bubbles can have, in my opinion, is Ishiki and his suspicion, present since chapter 15, that there is a traitor within his own organization. Through the context we as readers receive throughout the Versus Kara arc, we are able to interpret Ishiki's thoughts, which are represented by speech bubbles, more precisely. To better understand this, let us briefly jump to Ishiki's conversation with Kajin Koji. Kajin Koji was assigned the task of retrieving the vessel from the crashed airship and bringing it back to Kara. However, he unexpectedly learns when Ishiki personally appears in Konoha that Ishiki himself could have retrieved the vessel at any time. The vessel retrieval mission was never truly necessary. Ishiki also explains why he did not retrieve Kawaki himself at first. In his view, the crash of the airship transporting Kawaki was not an accident. Someone deliberately caused it and made it look like one. Armed with this context, a reread of the Versus Scientific Ninja Tool arc and the Versus Kara arc becomes much more interesting. Ishiki's speech bubbles can now be interpreted far more precisely. Ishiki's silent investigation begins with Kara's first meeting after the crash of the airship. Instead of retrieving the vessel himself, he reports its loss. Kajin Koji volunteers and Ishiki assigns him the task. Later, during Delta's conversation with Ishiki, the topic is how unusually long Kajin Koji is taking to return. We also see that Delta has even lost her appetite due to the loss of the vessel. In contrast, Ishiki remains calm and composed while eating. He remarks that the vessel will return to him sooner or later, as it cannot escape him. The scene ends with a ... speech bubble from Ishiki. The thought is likely something like, "What are you planning, Kajin Koji?" further solidifying Ishiki's suspicion towards him. The next interesting moment occurs when Delta returns to the Kara hideout. She reports that Kajin Koji seems less interested in retrieving Kawaki and more focused on getting information. Ishiki is then depicted with a ... speech bubble. The thought is likely something like, "So you are the traitor, Kajin Koji." Ishiki then repeats the word information out loud while glancing over his shoulder toward Amado. Ishiki is once again shown with a ... speech bubble. His thoughts now turn toward Amado, whom he likely also begins to suspect because of the word information. The thought could be interpreted as, "What would you gain from betraying me, Amado?" After that, Ishiki appears directly in front of Kawaki through Karma. He immediately makes eye contact with Kajin Koji's toad in Naruto's garden. Kajin Koji caused the toad to explode, and we then see a ... speech bubble from Ishiki, who's likely thinking something like, "I'll deal with you later." When first reading Ishiki's ... speech bubbles, we could only vaguely interpret what he might be thinking. However, through information we later receive from Ishiki, we are able, on a reread, to put ourselves in Ishiki's shoes and interpret his thoughts more precisely. This was just one of many examples of how ... speech bubble can enrich the reading experience. Therefore, we will now go through a few smaller examples that I find interesting and worth mentioning. During Boruto's and Naruto's sparring match, Naruto secretly tests a scientific ninja tool capable of absorbing ninjutsu. During the fight, Naruto absorbs Boruto's Rasengan. While both Boruto and Sarada are confused about what happened to the Rasengan, Mitsuki is depicted with a ... speech bubble. He is likely the only one who already suspects that the Rasengan was absorbed. When Naruto absorbs Boruto's jutsus again, Mitsuki is once more shown with a ... speech bubble. His suspicion is confirmed, as he then explains to Sarada that Naruto absorbs Boruto's jutsu. Another interesting moment occurs when Konamaru and Ao face each other. Konamaru demands information from Ao, but Ao does not respond. Instead, he is depicted with a blank stare and a ... speech bubble. The thought is likely something like, "You are pissing me off," because immediately afterward, he launches a surprise attack on Konamaru. Later, when Boruto fights Ao, something similar happens. When Boruto states that Ao has no longer the ability to absorb techniques, Ao lets out a dismissive "pff," followed by the same blank stare, paired with a ... speech bubble. Again, likely meaning something like, "You were pissing me off." However, Konamaru, having previously experienced the same look, recognized that Ao is planning another surprise attack and rushes in to take the hit instead of Boruto. When Amado is taken into Konoha's custody for interrogation, his hands are bound with leather handcuffs. Amado tests the freedom of movement in these restraints and is then depicted with a ... speech bubble. His thought is likely something like, "How primitive." In Boruto 2 Blue Vortex, we see Boruto being restrained with newly developed handcuffs created by Amado. When Boruto wakes up in his interrogation room, he first tests the freedom of movement of his hands, and he is then depicted with a ... speech bubble. Boruto's thought is likely directed toward the upgraded restraints used by Konoha. The final ... speech bubble example I want to discuss takes place directly after Ishiki is forced to reincarnate in Jigen's body. Kajin Koji sits atop a pillar and observes Ishiki's reincarnation from above. The very first speech bubble we see from Ishiki after his rebirth is a ... speech bubble, while he looks up at Kajin Koji. Immediately afterward, he shrinks the pillar Kajin Koji is sitting on, forcing him down to the ground. Ishiki is an arrogant character, and the most fitting thought would be something like, "No one looks down on me," which perfectly explains why he first shrinks Koji's pillar. For readers Speech bubbles serve as a portal into the story's world. They encourage readers to think critically about conversations, characters, and their reactions in order to deduce the meaning behind these bubbles. Additionally, a reread of the manga becomes far more engaging due to the speech bubbles. With increased knowledge on a second read-through, readers can often immediately understand bubbles they might have missed or misinterpreted previously. Empathy for the characters is another fascinating aspect. To decipher certain speech bubble, readers often need to put themselves in a character's shoes. This bubble also provides room for discussion. When a new chapter is released, fans can speculate on possible interpretation of specific speech bubbles. The speech bubbles are a fascinating stylistic tool that enriches the reader's experience by adding layers of mystery and depth to a character interactions. They spark curiosity, invite analysis, and encourage rereads with fresh perspectives. While they play a prominent role in the Boruto manga, this device is by no means exclusive to it. Many other works such as Death Note, Naruto, One Piece, Dragon Ball, and Attack on Titan also employ speech bubbles to heighten tension and deepen storytelling. This shared used across different series underscores how universal and powerful such a simple stylistic choice can be in the hands of a skilled mangaka. So if you ever stumble upon such a speech bubble while reading the next chapter of a manga, it can be enough to briefly think about what sentence the character might be thinking.